we're going to go over the helpful grant writing tips to give you some ideas on how you can improve your grant writing. We want to go, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but go over it briefly. First and foremost, read the entire proposal and get to know what we're asking for and what information we need. Any extraneous information basically will get pitched, but please make sure everything you send in is all together and organized. It makes it easier. We try to keep Jessica happy because she's the one who goes through all these first. So please, if you have any questions, call her. But please make sure you understand what we're looking for in the grants. Some of the tips is make the project's goals realistic. A lot of these grants, sometimes, I know you guys, you're in this to help people, but sometimes you try to do a lot more than you actually can do. So please make sure, you know, what you're asking for and what you're doing are realistic. And one of the methods that to use is the SMART method, and Deb's going to go over that in just a few minutes. On the budget, Laura will be going over the budget part. But again, think about what you're doing. And I know the grants are a certain amount. We'd like to see detailed budgets, not just throwing things together. So make your budget as accurate as possible. Again, write in a clear, concise manner. A lot of the board members were also research advocates and review scientific grants. And let me tell you, even the researchers have a hard time writing grants. So if you can make it clear and concise and get your point across, it helps us a whole lot when we start reviewing the grants. And again, sell your idea, put your passion in it. Let us know what you're really trying to do, how many people you're going to be treating, you know, give us a good idea of everything that you're trying to do. It helps us understand better, and we can review your grant, give it a fair review than if we're trying to read between the lines. So the thing is be thorough, but be concise. Can you scroll down just a little bit for the second page, Jeff? Okay, edit and share for comments. Use bullet points. Make sure your points are direct. Be consistent. We see a lot of times where in the writing part you say one thing and then when you get to the budget it's different. So make sure throughout the grant everything is consistent. Again, use an active voice instead of a passive one. It shows your passion. It helps us understand better. And with acronyms, one of the big things is there are acronyms. We know in the science community, there are acronyms for everything, but if you spell them out, because some of the reviewers may not know what the acronym is for, so you can spell it out initially and then in parentheses put the initials or whatever, but at least we'll know what you're talking about. Remember the details. The other thing is, please check your spelling and grammar. It makes it much easier to read. Check your math for the budget and make sure your calculations are correct. It's amazing how often, a lot of times you're doing these in your head, but really write down so we know the numbers add up, because it's real confusing and you basically will lose points if your numbers aren't right. I mean, you've got to be thorough and complete when you're writing the grant. Have someone else, if you're writing the grant, if the project director or whatever is writing grant, let one of your other people look at it and read it, because you've been spending all this time writing on it and you may miss the typos or you may miss the grammatical part. They will probably pick it up. And one of the tools I used to use, because my dad was had several small newspapers, is if you read it backwards, you can pick up things a whole lot quicker than reading it forwards. And do you have any questions on these grant writing tips at all? Again, they will be posted. But the big thing is be concise, be clear, grammar, math, please make sure it's all correct. And basically now I'm turning it over to Deb to talk about the SMART objectives.
Well, and of course I didn't, in being detail unoriented, I didn't send my presentation to Jessica, so I don't have that, but you can actually just keep the tips up if you wish. I just wanted to say, just as a college prepared nurse, my whole life revolved around nursing care plans. And then involved as executive director of a couple nonprofits into business plans or nonprofit strategies. So it's kind of ingrained in my bones, SMART. And we read so many grants and they're all wonderful, but a lot of them, the ones that stand out are the ones that are a little bit more specific. So not as much words. So this is where less is more. So you just want to follow the SMART method to achieve your goal. And you can actually just Google SMART and you'll get some templates that you can also use. So basically you want to be specific. Those are the who's, what's, where, when, how. The goal, of course, is going to be something that aligns with our priorities. So if you look at our priority areas, which is why you're applying for one of our grants, you will see, educate women and men in the areas that they need to become proactive advocates, and down the list. So when you look at our priorities, make sure that your project aligns with our priorities, because that's going to get a better score in the grant process. Again, I just wanted to say about the spell check. Just run it through spell check several times. I'm not saying that it biases how we feel about the grant, but it does kind of show a little bit less professionalism that you'd want to see. So it's not that hard. Just make sure that the spelling is right on. The other thing is measurable is the second letter in SMART, and that is make sure what metrics are you going to use to measure your success. If it's over a longer period of time, have some milestones along the way so that we can see that. The other thing is achievable. Make sure it's doable. Make sure you have the resources to complete the project. You have the staff. If you don't, or you need something in particular, are you going to look for an outside source? Are you going to look for an in-kind donation? Or are you going to look for additional sponsors or people that will help you underwrite the budget part of the grant? And then make sure it's relevant. It aligns with the goals of your organization as well. You don't want to take on a project that's outside of the realm of what you're already doing, so you make sure that it all fits with your goals in your organization as well. And then time bound. Make sure that there's a timetable for success so that you have, so we can see that in a certain amount of time, these goals will be achieved within the grant cycle. So that's basically about it. I just encourage you to read and edit your own work, like not once, but maybe several times, and just pare down the unnecessary words that you're adding to the grant to make it just that much more targeted and specific. And that that is something that is enjoyed by the reviewers who have to muddle through all the wording in order to get to the basics of your proposal. So that's my 2 cents, and I hope it helps.
Thanks, Deb. Anne popped up something that spell check. If you spell the word correctly, but it's the wrong word, it's not going to count it as misspelled. So proofreading is really important that you get it across. Going over the RFA, talking about the different areas. Can you put up that slide on the, okay, when you're going over the priority areas, be real careful that you are picking one, or if you're going to try to do 2, that's why we're saying don't try to overdo, but pick your area and make sure what you're trying to do actually fits in that area. Sometimes You think it might, but please be thorough when you read each priority area. We want to educate men and women in the areas where they need to be proactive advocates for themselves. And it can be done one-on-one, it can be done virtual, it can be done in person, workshops, different things like that. Provide education to breast cancer survivors and their families, going from prevention and screening all the way through to survivorship. Provide breast education health to young women and men, focusing on middle school, high school and college ages. We're seeing breast cancer diagnosed early and earlier. My earliest diagnosis for a patient I worked with was, she was a senior in high school, carried the BRCA1 gene, and she had a 13-year-old sister. So, you know, what do you do then when you have someone that young who usually isn't in the system? So we really want to get the word out to our younger people as well, and create and provide a method of education for late stage breast cancer. We're seeing more metastatic. However, our metastatic patients are living a lot longer. So it's not the death sentence that it used to be. It's actually becoming more of a chronic disease in a lot of cases. So these are the areas we want you to look at when you're writing the grant. Eligibility, you've got to be a 5013C based in Florida. Or if you are an out-of-state, the money has got to be spent in Florida. It can't go outside the state. We've added some new restrictions this year, and I want to be specific on these. They must be specific to breast health, awareness, and education. If a project is combined with breast and say heart, or breast and ovarian, the money has to be used for the breast part. It can't go towards anything else. Again, services have to be provided in the state of Florida. If virtual technology is being used, a reasonable percentage of the viewers must be in the state of Florida. Equipment costs, if applicable, can't exceed more than 15% of direct costs, and it should be used totally on the project. It can't be used on another project. So we've had situations where somebody will buy a computer and we know it's going to be used on other things too. So we want it used on our project. So if you're looking at computers and some software, a lot of times we're going to delete that from your grant, because we know it's not being specific to that, and we want to get the most bang for our buck, because the money that comes in is raising money is not easy, especially in the economy right now. So we really want to make sure that the money that we give you, you are using it on our projects. If you're providing meals, there can't be more than $10 per person. One of my pet peeves is a lot of grants will put in, they're giving these gifts out, and having been around and doing this for a long time, you can get gifts for free if you do a little bit of work. So a lot of these things we're gonna not take or will cut out of your budget, because there's so much that is given away, especially from, if you call a pharmaceutical company, they will give you gifts if it's for education. So we don't like seeing money spent on this. We prefer that you do a lot of in-kind things with your grant. It also sort of gives you a leg up if there's a lot of in-kind, so we know you've done a lot of work on this. You're not just asking us to foot the entire bill. Travel costs have to adhere to the current IRS guidelines. So if you're a staff member, you're reimbursed at 1%, but if you've got a volunteer who is helping with your project as doing traveling, that is reimbursed at another amount. So make sure that your travel costs, especially on mileage, are correct according to IRS guidelines. This one I'm going to read because we just added this one in. We have had some situations, and other national organizations have had it, and local organizations. If the applicant or any of its key employees, directors, officers, or agents are convicted of fraud or any crime involving other financial or administrative impropriety within the preceding 12 months, the applicant is not eligible to apply for a grant during the current funding cycle and will not be eligible to apply for a new grant until the applicant can demonstrate that appropriate remedial measures have been implemented to mitigate any criminal content occurring in the future. This was added because there were organizations that ran into this problem. So we just want to keep everything above board, clear and honest. And since I see our leader back, I'm going to turn it over to Carol. You're muted, Carol. Carol, you're muted.
I know.
Oh.
I'm sitting at the table with my mom, so finish up where you are, and then let me know if you're ready to go into the budget yet.
Well, do you want Valencia to go first since she has to leave?
If she, absolutely.
Is Valencia?
I'm so sorry. Valencia had to leave. She had another meeting to join.
Okay, well then we will go. We're ready to go with Laura. So
I have a before Laura starts, I have a quick question. My name is Haronda Mortimer. I'm calling from Florida Department of Health. Now, you had mentioned freebies and things like that for gifts from the health from pharmacies and things like that. Because of us as an entity, as the health department, we're actually not allowed to ask for things.
yeah,
So if we were to apply for the grant and we put things like kits, educational kits, that comes with, things, planners, things, whatever, knickknacks, would that be something that would be okay?
Jess.
Okay.
Carol.
All right. Oh, I thought you said yes. You said Jess.
Yeah, Jess or Carol.
It's Carol. In that situation where you're not allowed to do that, then of course you would be allowed to to have some kits or whatever gifts you want, because it's an exception since you're not allowed to do it as part of your department.
Okay.
And Hernando,
Thank you.
I think the biggest thing is that they don't want to see an over exorbitant amount spent on promotional items or giveaways.
Okay. Thank you so much. And I know we are working on trying to put some things together, kind of incentive items, but we also are looking at doing some advertising, billboard, things like that around education as well. So I just wanted to ask that question. Thank you so much.
No problem.
Thank you.
Carol, it's going over to Laura now. Do you want to? You're muted.
Okay. Hi, Laura. Good morning.
Hi.
You're up.
Okay. So just a couple of points before I start. And going back to the editing of the document and all, please, on the budget items, please use a calculator to verify your numbers. Pretty much everybody's going to have a calculator, if nothing else, on their cell phone. So just run it through, make sure that the numbers add up, make sure there's no issues. And the other thing, I am an accountant, so some of this is a lot easier to me than it's probably to some of you. So if I say anything that doesn't make sense, when we get to the end, please don't hesitate to ask. We want to make this as understandable as possible. So having said that, salaries and honorariums. Salaries are to be included for people working directly on the project unless they're a full-time employee and this is part of their normal hours and their normal duties. Don't include salaries for administration or project management. Again, this is for people who are going to be working specifically on the project. If it's hourly, include the rate and how you determine the number of hours. Materials and supplies, those are consumable items like the educational materials, promotional items, refreshments. Remember, not more than $10 per person per meal. And remember to include descriptions of what you're going to be getting and what the cost is and how that relates to the project. Equipment, as Jerry said, it cannot exceed 15% of direct costs and must be prorated according to the life of the equipment. So if you're buying an item that is going to last for 3 years, and this project is for 6 months, only include 6 months of the value. And again, if it's a computer and it's going to be used for something else, and we know it's going to be excluded. So we really have to be very careful with equipment, make sure that it's related specifically to your project. Travel, again, you have to adhere to IRS guidelines, specifically for the employee versus volunteer rates, and justify why the travel, particularly, if it's going to include airfare or something like that, why. Other expenses, postage, photocopying, specify, if you have more than one category of other expense, specify what those are and what the amounts are for those. In-kind donations, those are non-cash donations, and please be sure to record those so that we know that you have reached out to mitigate the costs and to reduce the amount that you're going to be requesting because you've gotten in-kind from someone else. That's really important. Allowable and unallowable costs. Again, the salaries, it has to be for somebody who's actually working on the project, not supervising the project, not doing it as part of their normal daily duties. Specify the number of hours, the pay rate. If you're bringing in a speaker, the honorarium that you will be paying for said speaker. Materials and supplies. Again, that's the giveaways and such, particularly if you can't get them from a pharmaceutical company. Equipment costs, I think we've gone over that ad nauseum. Travel costs, remember, adhere to the IRS guidelines. Venue space, don't go crazy and get the Taj Mahal when you can get a local community space, perhaps even for free. So be sure to remember to check all of your available resources. Unallowable, salaries for personnel who will be working on the project, who's being paid as a full-time employee. That's not going to be allowable. Project administration, again, not allowable. Computers, projectors, printers, large fixed asset type items, not allowable. Indirect costs, not allowable. Everything has to be directly related to your project. And construction or renovation of a space, that's not going to be included either. And that pretty much brings us to the end of budget. I'll turn it back to Carol.
Okay. Hello. I'm gonna fill in the conversation that Valencia was going to start about the evaluation and the goals. Unfortunately, I wasn't here to see how much you were able to hear about the goals, but one of the things that we want to make sure is that you have your SMART objectives. Use your goals to be a little specific. What do you want to, who do you want to reach? How do you want to reach them? And what would you like to see them either be able to do or be able to have as next steps in their process so that you can evaluate that in an easy way. One of the things that we do know is that if you have your goal, and let's say it's to educate people about the benefits of mammograms or whatever you're choosing to do, that you some people do a pre-test and a post-test, which basically means you ask some questions in writing, usually, and see how much knowledge they have. And then after the project is completed, you ask them the same questions and see if they've increased their knowledge about it and if what they've retained. And the other thing might be that you find out how many people they shared that information with that were not able to participate in the program directly, because that's also who you're going to be able to reach out in that. So that's also good. The other thing, when you come with evaluations, be specific about what you're going to try to do. Some people will evaluate on how many people have followed up and had a screening of some kind, or whether they went to another session or a workshop that they were presented at. There's all different kinds of ways to evaluate, but first you have to decide what your goal is so you know what you're going to evaluate. And you can be, it can be simply stated, but it needs to be something that can be evaluated. So that's one of the things that we look for. You will have, we have an evaluation for a 6-month progress report. And in that 6-month progress report, you're going to do a narrative and decide and describe exactly what you've been able to do and to accomplish over that 6 months. Now, obviously, with the COVID situation, there have been many times when you can't do an in-person event that you would plan to do. So in that case, you mentioned that we couldn't do it there, and instead we did a virtual meeting, or instead we postponed it and we're going to do it another time. We totally understand that. We just need to know. And then when you have your project, describe how many people you've served at that particular meeting. Describe if you're hitting the target group that you were looking to hit. I mean, are you able to bring in people who you feel were underserved and needed more information? Let us know all about that, because that's really important to us, that we keep getting the word out to people who need to know about it. After that, you can put as part of that progress report what you're planning to go forward with. If you weren't able to do something, were there changes that you made to your program? Did you find that something wasn't able to work, so instead we're going to do something else? Anything, any revisions that you've made are of interest to us, so that would also be very important to include. If you had any educational material or the publications or press releases, and also anything that gave some recognition to the Florida Breast Cancer Foundation, would also be good to have included in that 6-month progress report. And at the end, there is a final project report, a final grant report, that basically takes you from the beginning to the end and said, basically, you describe what you did, how you did it, and what changes were made, and what impact you found in whatever the population is that you served, whatever the program was, related to what your goals are, to see if your goals were met, and see about your target group. Did you get people from the target group you expected? Do you believe you hit additional people from their sharing their information with other people? And did you hit other groups that surprised you, or you hadn't expected to be part of the group but were there? Sometimes that might happen if you do a virtual one and it's advertised. You might have people joining you who you might not have expected, and that's great for them to be there too. Attach anything involved in your budget and your expenses and everything like that, so that we know where the money actually went. You had a budget, how was it followed? Did you underestimate, overestimate what you needed? And if it was underestimated, how did you make up for it? And so on. And then again, any of the releases and the educational materials and so on, that's what we have. Now, if you if you have any specific questions, I know we're going to have Jessica talk about the administrative part. And we're going to leave time at the end for questions because I'm sure there are many. I hope there are many. It's nice to see we have a lot of participants. I think that's fabulous. And one of the things that I want to piggyback on what Laura said, I am going to give you my personal email. And if you have a question, or if you're in the middle of doing something and Jessica's busy or whatever, feel free to call or email and tell me that you need a phone call back. I'm happy to speak to you and to answer any questions that you have. It doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to give you the clear path to having a grant. But our goal here is to make sure that you are able and understand how to present your proposal in the best possible way. And if there's a question, we want to answer it so that it will be the best that you could present to us. And it's really, we're really happy to do that. That's our goal. Jessica?
Okay, it's real quick housekeeping stuff for the submission of your grant applications. Please make sure that you include your IRS determination letter. It is the nonprofit status letter that you guys all receive for your organizations, but we do need, it's the IRS tax determination letter. It includes the EIN number as well. In the paragraph, in the narrative, it talks about how you are 501c3 and tax free. Okay. Another thing, a real quick thing, is that your entire application needs to come in as one document. That we do have a fillable PDF online. I do know that sometimes the fillable PDF is hard to work with if you don't have the correct Adobe program. If you need the Word document, please don't hesitate to email me. My email is on the website also, as well as on the application. I will be happy to send you the Word document, which makes it so much easier to add your IRS form, to put in your narrative, put the budget in, anything you need to do. But we do need the application to be submitted as one complete document for review. The review process is a peer review process. We have about 10 to 12 active education committee members as well as staff who review. And then they'll go to the board after the recommendation by the committee. So please make sure when you are writing the applications, putting it all together, it's in a nice, concise manner. That's why we do ask the whole project is in one complete document. All right. Another quick thing is double check your budgets. I know the budgets are a big thing for the committee as well as the board. Please make sure the budget that's listed on your initial sheet, as well as the budget in the budget form, match together. And also the numbers that you include in your narrative match the numbers in your final budget form. There's a budget justification form that's really important for everyone to make sure all the details and the reasons why you need certain funds for certain things, promotional items, equipment, all that sort of stuff is clearly stated why you need them. It makes it so much easier for the reviewers as well as for the board to start approving the funds. And I think that's really it. Application deadlines are March 11th. Please keep that in mind. If it comes in March 12th, 12:01 on March 12th, I will not accept it. Okay, we've been receiving more and more applications every year, so we just have to make sure we stick to our deadlines. And then
There's two questions in the chat.
Yep.
Okay.
okay.
You have to catch me up. Is it from Liz? Is equipment an item above $3,000?
Yeah, it's the last two from Liz and Amy.
Okay. Is equipment an item above $3,000? It not necessarily.
Right.
It depends on what you're buying. I hope that answers your question. It just needs to be necessary for your project. And can we include in the budget money to pay someone to train the volunteers? That's an interesting question. If it's not a person who is already on board or being paid by the organization, if it's an extra a person who has a specialty for that training for the volunteers, I would say yes. I hope I've answered them. Those two. Anything else? Any other questions?
And if I may, if that person is specifically relevant to training the volunteers, has the appropriate knowledge, make sure you document that in the narrative so that the reviewers know why you want to bring that person in. Justify it.
Okay. Right now, I'm gonna give you my email address. You can write it down, but we'll also have it posted. Somebody's, just ignore that for a minute. My last name is Goldberg, Goldberg, Carol, CAROLE 14@gmail.com. So if you have any further questions, please let us know. Now I'm going to ask you a question. And that question is for you to please tell us if there's anything that we haven't covered or that you would like clarified more, or something that we're not covering at all in the RFA that you have a question about. Any suggestions like that, please let us know. Our goal is to make this as clear of a document for the request and as complete as possible. And if there's something that would make it better or easier for you to complete, we'd love to know it. Anything else? I hope this has been helpful to all of you. Again, we are going to post the recording of this, and we hope that everything is clear and successful for you, and we hope to be able to give you lots of money. Any other questions?
I have a question.
Yes, go ahead. Hi.
Hey, so you guys have done a good job and thank you for doing this. My question is, I have some ideas flowing, but I'm thinking more in terms of like a pilot project. And is there a minimum amount of money that you would want to deal with? In other words, a stepping stone into a bigger project kind of thing for another year?
We are authorized to grant up to $5,000 for one county, if you're working in one county, and up to $10,000 in another county. And if you're using more than one county, 2 counties, that's what we're allowed to do. That doesn't mean if you want to do a pilot project and all you need is $2,500 this year, that we wouldn't consider it. That would be fine. We're happy to consider anything like that. It's not really the amount of money, it's the quality of the program that you want to do or want to try that we're really evaluating on. Does that help, I hope?
Yeah, thank you.
Good, sure. Anybody else?
I'm sorry, Carol.
That's
Basically, if you justify and explain and make sure everything matches, it's a pretty solid grant. But you treat us, I always think of the keep it simple, stupid, the KISS method. Treat us like we don't know anything. Explain everything. Justify everything. It makes it easier on us and the reviewers as well.
okay. Anybody have any other comments or questions? In that case, I thank you all. This has been a great opportunity for us to share with you. And we are happy to continue to answer any questions that you have. contact Jessica or use my email. And we'll hear a lot from you in the next couple of weeks by March 11th. Actually, figure it's the 10th, then you'll be sure to make it. Just kidding. All right, thanks, guys. Have a wonderful rest of the day, and thanks for participating.